My name is Ethan Miller, and I always believed my family was built on trust. But 2 weeks ago, everything I'd known shattered over a single dinner table. It was Sunday. I expected laughter, our usual family catch-up. My wife, Laura, 35, our 2 kids playing in the next room, and me checking messages, sipping my iced tea. Then my sister-in-law, Sarah, froze. Her face whitened. My younger brother, Alex, cleared his throat eyes, avoiding mine. And in that silent moment, the world broke. My wife's expression shifted. Guilt, fear, something darker. Before I could blink, Sarah whispered, "It started 8 years ago. Alex and Laura," and then I saw the betrayal in their eyes, no words needed. 8 years. A college year affair, hidden in our home, right under my nose while I thought everything was perfect. My heart thundered. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt icy calm, like the world around me slowed and went dark. Why? I whispered. My voice shook, but the words came. They looked away. That night, I went to the basement silent, heavy. I stared at our old family photos lining the walls. Baby pictures, childhood birthdays, Christmas mornings. Every milestone felt fake now. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in the dark, scrolling through memory, replaying moments, the holiday dinners, vacation photos, every shared smile now tarnished. I thought, should I confront them? File for divorce? Run away? But for now, I did nothing. I just stared at the phone, unopened messages from Laura, unanswered calls from Alex, and one text from my mom. We're devastated. I closed the phone, went upstairs, and lay in bed beside my wife, never touching her again. Because that night, I realized the hardest thing wasn't discovering the affair. It was accepting that my life, everything I had believed in, no longer existed. I wish I could say I confronted her the next day, that I stood up, shouted, demanded answers. But the truth is, I didn't. I woke up in that same bed, her back to me, and the air so heavy it almost suffocated me. Laura stirred as I got up. "Ethan, can we talk?" she asked, voice soft, uncertain. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I went through the motions like a ghost. Got dressed, made coffee, packed the kids' lunches. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling. But I didn't sit across from her like I usually did. The kids ran in, cheerful as ever. I kissed them goodbye like I always did, and when I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I spent the day at work, but my mind wasn't there. I stared at my screen, trying to focus, but my thoughts were tangled in memories, Laura laughing at my jokes. Our wedding day, the birth of our children. Were all those moments lies? I checked my phone 100 times. No new messages. I think she was waiting for me to reach out first. Maybe she thought I'd yell. Maybe she expected me to explode. But I didn't. I couldn't. My silence became my weapon, and it hurt her more than screaming ever could. That evening she tried again. "I never meant for it to go that far," she said. "It was a mistake. A stupid, stupid mistake. 8 years. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. A repeated, deliberate betrayal. Why him?" I finally asked. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "I don't know. He was always there. You were working so much and I felt invisible. It doesn't make it right, but I was lonely." The words hit harder than I expected. She wasn't wrong, I had been working too much. I had missed family dinners, birthday parties, movie nights. But that didn't justify what she did. "You should have told me. We could have fixed it, or ended it," I said. "I was afraid," she whispered. And there it was, the truth we never said aloud. She was afraid. I was oblivious. And somewhere between all that fear and ignorance, our marriage fell apart. That night, I slept on the couch. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't say goodnight, because it wasn't good anymore. It was broken, and I wasn't sure if we'd ever be able to fix it. I started noticing the little things. Laura would pause before speaking, as if calculating every word. Her texts were shorter, her laughter forced. The house we had built together now felt like a museum of unspoken words, each room echoing with what we didn't say. She began cooking my favorite meals again, leaving notes in my lunchbox like she used to. I'd find sticky notes that said, "Thinking of you." I didn't know how to feel. Grateful? Angry? Manipulated? Some nights she'd sit beside me on the couch, a little too close, trying to bridge a gap that felt like a canyon. I'd shift away subtly, pretending not to notice her effort. But I did, and maybe that's what made it worse. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I wasn't ready to walk away either. Our children sensed something. Kids always do. "Daddy, are you mad at Mommy?" My daughter asked one night while brushing her teeth. I froze. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you don't smile at her anymore." That sentence shattered me. I was trying so hard to protect them, to keep the storm between Laura and me behind closed doors. But children always see the cracks before we do. That night, I lay awake and stared at the ceiling. I thought about the man Laura had been with. Did he make her laugh like I used to? Did he know the way she liked her tea, or how she cried during sad commercials? I hated that someone else knew those things about her. Hated that she had let him into her heart, her body, her life. The next day, I asked her if she was still in contact with him. She shook her head. No, I ended it for good. I blocked him on everything. I wanted to believe her. Desperately. But trust, once shattered, isn't rebuilt with words. It's rebuilt with time, with proof, with consistency. She offered to go to counseling. Said she'd do whatever it took to fix us. I told her I'd think about it. And I did. I thought about everything. The good years, the bad ones, the days we danced in the kitchen, the nights she cried in our bed. I wasn't sure where we stood anymore. I wasn't sure if love was enough. But I knew I needed to find out. Because somewhere beneath all the pain and betrayal, a small voice inside me whispered, "She's still the woman you chose. And maybe, just maybe, you're still the man who can forgive her." The first counseling session felt like walking into a battlefield unarmed. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, Laura clutching a tissue before a single word was said. The therapist, a middle-aged woman with calm eyes and a clipboard, welcomed us with a gentle smile. "Why are you here?" she asked. Laura answered first. "Because I made a mistake. A terrible one. And I want to fix what I broke." Her voice cracked. I didn't look at her. When it was my turn, I said, "Because I don't know if I can forgive her, but I owe it to our kids to myself to find out." The sessions that followed were raw, unfiltered, and exhausting. We dissected our marriage like a coroner performing an autopsy, exposing every fracture, every moment of silence that had allowed the rot to spread. Laura admitted she had felt invisible. Said she had tried at first, to get my attention, but when that didn't work, she sought comfort somewhere else. It wasn't about him, she said. It was about being seen, being wanted. I didn't justify my emotional absence. I had been consumed by work, by stress, by 100 excuses that seemed valid at the time but felt hollow now. But still she chose betrayal. The therapist reminded us, healing isn't linear. Some days we made progress. Other days we left angrier than we entered. One session I said what I hadn't dared to say aloud. I see him when I close my eyes. Not his face, just the idea of him. That there was someone else. That you let him touch the parts of you that were mine. Laura cried silently. I didn't comfort her. I couldn't, but I stayed. That was the shift. Not the forgiveness, not the reconciliation. Just the choice to stay in the room, and week after week, that choice became a ritual. I listened. She listened. We began to recognize the people. We used to be the ones who once built forts, out of blankets with our kids, who shared ice cream at midnight, who laughed at nothing for hours. Were we still those people? Could we be? One evening after a particularly hard session, Laura reached for my hand in the car. I almost pulled away but didn't. Her hand was trembling. So was mine. We're broken, she whispered. Yeah, I replied. But maybe not beyond repair? It wasn't a promise. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. And after everything, something was more than I thought I'd ever have again. I thought I had heard it all. But nothing prepared me for the moment I saw her. It started with a moment of weakness curiosity, maybe. I typed his name into social media. Laura swore they'd ended things long ago, but doubt is a stubborn parasite. I had to see. Had to know. His profile was private, but hers wasn't. Her name was Claire. Blonde. Wide smile. Pictures full of sunshine and wine glasses and beach vacations. In one photo, she stood beside a man I assumed it was him with her hand on his chest. The kind of pose that screams possession. But then, there it was. A photo from last year. Laura standing next to Claire, smiling at the camera. I froze. My wife had taken pictures with this woman. They looked like friends. Or coworkers. Or worse, confidants. Why would Laura pose with her? Laugh with her? I felt something primal rise in me. A storm of confusion and fury and betrayal all over again. That night I confronted Laura. Who is Claire? She didn't answer right away. Her silence said more than words. Don't lie to me, I said. My voice was barely mine. She was his girlfriend, Laura finally said. She didn't know about me. Not until the end. The room tilted. You knew her. You met her. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. Laura whispered. He told me he was single. I believed him. Then I met Claire at a company event. I didn't know she was with him until later. You still stood there, took photos, smiled. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. I was already in too deep and I was ashamed. I left the house that night, drove around until the streetlights blurred and my thoughts spiraled. It wasn't just the betrayal of our marriage. It was the sheer intimacy of her world overlapping with his. With hers. 3 lives, entangled in secrets. I stared at my wedding ring in the dark car. Wondered how something once so sacred had become the anchor dragging me through hell. But I came back. Not because I forgave her. Because I needed to understand. How had we become strangers with so many ghosts between us? And maybe, just maybe, if we dragged those ghosts into the light, we could finally breathe again. I started writing letters I never planned to send. It became a ritual late at night, when the house was quiet and the air hung heavy with silence. I'd sit by the window with a notebook and pen, scribbling out thoughts too messy, too painful to say aloud. Dear Laura, one began, I don't know if I hate you or if I hate the version of me that let this happen. Sometimes the words came like a flood, furious, raw, bleeding. Other nights they were quiet confessions. I miss how you used to reach for my hand without thinking. I miss when your lies hadn't changed the shape of your face. There was a strange comfort in writing to her without needing her to respond. No performance, no pretense, just truth in its ugliest form. And it wasn't just Laura. I wrote to Claire, to the man she thought she loved, to the man I used to be, to the man I was now angrier, lonelier, but maybe more honest than he'd ever been. I kept the letters in a shoebox under the bed. Some days I thought about burning them. Other days I imagined giving them to Laura, dropping them in her lap and watching her read every page, every razor blade word I never dared speak. But deep down, I knew they weren't for her. They were for me, for the part of me that needed to scream but couldn't. One evening, Laura walked into the room as I was finishing one. She didn't say anything, just stood there with a soft, haunted look in her eyes. Do you still love me? She asked. I looked up at her, unsure how to answer. Did I love her? Did I love the memory of her? Did I love the life we built, or was I mourning it? I don't know, I said truthfully. She nodded like she expected it, and for once, neither of us tried to fill the silence. We let it exist, let it breathe. That night I didn't write. I lay awake beside her, both of us staring at the ceiling, each buried in our own private storm. Love doesn't die in a scream, it dies in silence. And in that silence, I started to realize something. We were no longer fighting to save our marriage. We were trying to figure out if it was even ours anymore. The next morning, she made breakfast. It was something simple: scrambled eggs, toast, and the coffee just the way I liked it. She set the plate down in front of me with a small, hopeful smile as if eggs and butter could mend broken vows. Thought you might be hungry, she said gently. I wasn't, but I ate anyway. Every bite felt like swallowing the weight of our silence. She sat across from me, eyes flicking between her plate and my face, searching for signs of warmth, forgiveness, anything. I want to talk, she finally said. Not about what happened, about what comes next. I sipped my coffee. Okay. I think we should go to therapy. The word hovered in the air. Therapy, a word that felt clinical, cold, but maybe necessary. I'll go, I said. But not to fix this for your sake. If we're going to do this, it has to be for both of us. She nodded. I know. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Her voice cracked a little. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Later that day, she handed me something, a letter. I wrote it last night, she said, before I fell asleep. I hesitated, then unfolded the page. It wasn't an explanation. It wasn't a defense. It was a confession. In it, she wrote about how lonely she'd felt. How Claire made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. How it wasn't about sex, it was about connection. It was about escape. It was about everything we stopped saying to each other long before she crossed the line. I know it's not enough, the letter ended, but I needed you to know that it was never about you not being enough. It was about me not knowing who I was anymore. I folded the paper slowly and placed it on the table between us. You're right, I said. It's not enough. Because no letter, no apology, no admission of emotional crisis could rewrite the betrayal. But still, it was something. And something was more than nothing. We started therapy a week later. At first, we barely spoke during sessions. But as the weeks passed, we unraveled ourselves thread by thread. Sometimes it hurt more than it helped. Sometimes I left angrier than I arrived. But in that little office with peeling wallpaper and soft yellow lighting, We faced our mess, not as enemies, not as lovers, just two broken people trying to understand if the pieces could still fit. I started noticing little things. The way she'd pause before touching me, unsure if affection was still allowed. The way she folded my laundry with extra care, almost like an apology in fabric. The way she always waited for me to initiate conversations, as if afraid that her voice might trigger something painful. And then one night, after therapy, we sat in the car in silence. I stared out the windshield, watching the rain trail down like tiny rivers on glass. "I miss you," she whispered. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't hear her, but because I didn't know what to do with those 3 words anymore. What did it mean to miss someone you betrayed? Was it guilt? Regret? Hope? She looked at me, eyes full of something raw. "Do you think you'll ever love me the same again?" It was the question that hung over us like fog. Would I? Could I? "I don't know," I said honestly. She nodded slowly, lips pressed together in that way she did when trying not to cry. "I wouldn't blame you if you didn't." For the first time, I saw her not just as the woman who cheated, but as a woman who had broken her own heart in the process. We were both mourning something. The version of us that used to laugh in the kitchen at midnight, that used to text inside jokes during boring meetings, that used to reach for each other without second thoughts. That couple was gone. But in its place stood 2 people older, wearier, and painfully aware of how fragile love can be. "I want to try," I finally said. "I'm not promising forever, but I'll try." She reached over, slow and careful, and rested her hand on mine. It didn't feel electric. It didn't feel like a movie. It just felt human, soft, tentative, real. We drove home in silence again. But this time it didn't feel empty. It felt like the start of something else. Not the same love, but maybe a different kind. Something slower, something earned. Rebuilding trust is not romantic. It's not candlelit dinners or surprise getaways. It's ugly. It's awkward. It's showing up, even when you don't want to. We started scheduling small structured conversations. 30 minutes a night, no distractions, no accusations. Just truth. Sometimes we talked about how our days went. Sometimes we sat in silence until one of us broke. One night, she said, "I started writing again." I blinked. "Your poetry?" She nodded. "It helps. When the words don't come out right when I speak, they make more sense when I write." That night, she read me a poem. It was about regret, about a woman who buried her joy to chase a lie, about trying to come home to someone who didn't know if home still existed. I didn't say anything after she finished, but when she looked at me, eyes tired, hopeful, scared, I reached out and touched her cheek. "I'm still here," I said. A week later, we cooked dinner together. She forgot to set the timer, and the pasta turned to mush. And for a second, we both stared at the pot like it had insulted us. Then we laughed. The kind of laugh that feels like medicine. The kind of laugh that only comes after days and days of holding your breath. We didn't talk about the affair every night anymore, but it lingered like a scar, sometimes tender, sometimes forgotten, but always there. She began suggesting couples activities, painting, hiking, visiting a dog shelter, and though I was hesitant, I said yes, because every yes felt like a brick in the new foundation we were trying to build. She stopped asking if I loved her, maybe because she finally understood that love wasn't the question. It was trust. It was time. It was healing. We weren't healed. Not yet. But I started sleeping next to her again without flinching. I started leaving my phone on the nightstand again. I started looking at her and seeing less of the woman who broke me and more of the woman who was trying to fix us. One night, as she lay asleep beside me, breathing softly, I whispered into the dark, "I don't forgive you yet, but I think I want to." A few weeks after we started rebuilding, I found myself watching her from across the room as she folded laundry. Nothing special, nothing dramatic, but something real. She was humming under her breath, a tune I didn't recognize. I realized I hadn't seen her do that in a long time. I missed it. I missed her. Not the woman who cheated, not the broken version that came home crying, but the woman who used to leave love notes in my lunch bag, the one who would sing show tunes off key in the car, the one I married. And maybe, just maybe, she was still in there, trying to come back. She noticed me staring. "What?" she asked, half smiling. "Nothing," I said. "You're just glowing a little." She laughed. "That's the laundry detergent." "No," I said. "That's you." That night she kissed me first. Gently, hesitantly, like she was asking permission. I didn't pull away, but I didn't pull her closer either. We just stood there, lips barely brushing, a single moment suspended in the quiet. It wasn't passion. It wasn't forgiveness. It was progress. A few days later, we visited her mother. Her mom greeted me like nothing had happened. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she did and chose to pretend. Over dinner, her mom said, "You two still laugh like you're newlyweds." Neither of us responded. But we exchanged a glance. Because even in our brokenness, even in our mess, we still had a language that belonged only to us. On the drive home, she reached for my hand. I let her hold it. Her fingers were cold. Mine were trembling. But we didn't let go. I started reading the book our counselor gave us, The 7 Levels of Apology. I didn't get past level 3. It talked about rebuilding trust through accountability, not just remorse. She saw the book on the table. "You're reading that?" she asked. I nodded, trying. "I read it last year." My stomach twisted. "Last year?" After I cheated. "Before I told you?" I didn't respond. There it was again, the echo of the betrayal. Right when I thought we were moving forward. "I wanted to fix myself before I confessed," she said quietly. "But I realized I couldn't fix anything without you." There was a long silence. "I appreciate that you tried," I said, barely above a whisper. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. We were learning to sit in hard truths. We were learning that healing wasn't a straight line. It was a loop. Sometimes a spiral. Sometimes a crash. But for the first time, I believed we weren't doomed. We were just rebuilding, brick by brick, moment by moment. And sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it's silent forgiveness in the passenger seat of a long drive home. It was a Wednesday when I realized we hadn't talked about the affair in nearly a week. No passive-aggressive jabs. No awkward silences after seeing her phone light up. Just silence. But this time it wasn't tense. It was peaceful. I came home to dinner already made. She'd cooked my favorite lemon garlic chicken. She'd even made my mother's old rice recipe. The one she used to call too bland before. "I thought you hated this rice," I said. She shrugged. "I'm trying to understand the things that make you feel safe." And it hit me. Maybe she finally understood trust wasn't rebuilt through grand gestures. It was in the quiet. In rice, in doing laundry, in not flinching when I touched her arm. Later that evening, we sat on the couch watching reruns of a show we both used to love. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't push her off. I didn't overthink it. I just let her be there. Her breathing slowed. She was asleep, and I sat there frozen, feeling the weight of her on my shoulder, like a familiar blanket I had forgotten I missed. And yet I didn't relax, because beneath the warmth, there was fear. What if this was temporary? What if it all fell apart again? Could I survive another hit? The next day, our counselor asked us to list 5 things. We appreciated about each other, things from before and things from now. She went first. Her voice shook on the second one. "You always made me feel like I was enough. Even when I didn't believe it." I looked down. That one stung. Because I realized, deep down, I had stopped making her feel that way before the affair. I went next. "And when I said, 'You're fighting for this,'" she cried. She said, "I thought you'd never notice." It wasn't perfect. We still had bad days. I still had nightmares. She still had guilt. But that night, as I held her in bed, I noticed something that changed me. She whispered, "I know you don't trust me, but I'll keep showing up until you do." And I believed her. Not because she was perfect. Not because she deserved blind forgiveness. But because I could feel her presence again. She was present in the way she listened when I spoke. In the way she no longer reached for her phone during meals. In the way she asked about my day and actually waited for the full answer. This wasn't the woman who had cheated. This was someone who had broken and rebuilt and was trying to return to me piece by piece. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to meet her there. The closer we grew again, the more I noticed the small cracks still living beneath the surface, not just in her but in me. The damage didn't vanish with kind gestures and counseling sessions. It lingered like a bruise beneath the skin, sensitive to the slightest touch. One evening, while sorting laundry, I found an old t-shirt she used to sleep in during the affair. It meant nothing, just fabric, but I stared at it for 10 full minutes before folding it. She walked into the room mid-thought, saw my face, and stopped cold. "What is it?" I showed her the shirt. She paused, then said quietly, "I'll throw it away." "No," I said. "You don't need to, but I need to tell you what it makes me feel." She sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time I truly saw her brace herself. Not to defend, but to receive. I told her how certain sights, sounds, Even smells could transport me back to those dark days. How sometimes I couldn't stop the flood. How I hated feeling weak. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened. And when I was done, she whispered, "I can't erase the memories I stained, but I can make new ones with you." There was no poetry in her voice. No practiced speech. Just truth. We spent that weekend doing things we hadn't done in years. Went to a farmer's market. Argued over apples versus peaches. Held hands. Laughed. Real, messy, surprised at ourselves laughter. And during one quiet moment over coffee, she said, "Do you ever think we're better now?" I blinked. The question caught me off guard. "Better?" I asked. "After everything?" She nodded, and I realized. She didn't mean we were better because of the betrayal. She meant, are we stronger because we faced the fire and stayed? "I think we're more real now," I said. Less perfect. But maybe more true. That night, as we lay in bed, her fingers found mine under the covers. And for once I didn't pull away. Not because the pain was gone. Not because I'd forgotten. But because healing wasn't about erasing, it was about expanding. Making room for pain and joy to sit at the same table. And finally, I wasn't scared of that anymore. Even with the progress we made, trust didn't return overnight. It came in fragments, moments, small decisions that said, "I still choose you." I remember one evening when she received a late-night message on her phone. Her face paled slightly, not out of guilt, but out of knowing I'd noticed. She looked at me, held up the phone, and said, "It's just my sister. Want to read it?" And in that moment, I realized I didn't need to. The fact that she offered was more healing than any words on that screen. Still, the echoes of old wounds showed up uninvited. Once, during a dinner with friends, someone joked about cheating. A harmless quip to most. But I saw her flinch. I reached for her hand under the table. Squeezed it. Not to say, "It's okay," but to say, "I see you." The world didn't pause for us to heal. Life went on, work deadlines, family visits, birthdays. But within that chaos, we created safe spaces. Little rituals. We started having a truth hour every Sunday night. Just us, no distractions. A time to say what was in our hearts, even if it stung. Sometimes we just sat in silence. Sometimes we cried. But mostly, we remembered how to speak without fear. One night during truth hour, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever fully trust me again?" I thought hard, because the honest answer wasn't easy. "I don't know," I said, "but I know I want to." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't turn away. Instead, she said, "That's enough for me." We were building a new version of us, one that didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. One that carried the weight together. She started writing in a journal again. Not to document pain, but to track gratitude, and she let me read it. Every page filled with moments, some about me, some not. My husband made coffee this morning even though he was running late. We watched the rain in silence and it felt like a conversation. I looked at him today and didn't see the man I hurt. I saw the man who stayed. I didn't always feel strong, but when I read her words, I felt seen, valued, like the pieces of me that had cracked were now part of something beautiful. Not flawless, but unbreakable in a different way, because we weren't rebuilding to go back. We were moving forward with the scars as proof of survival, not shame. And for the first time I realized, trust wasn't about perfection. It was about trying, every single day. I didn't expect the letter. It was a quiet Sunday morning. She was out for a walk, and I was cleaning the study, when I found it folded neatly and tucked behind a framed photo of us at the beach. I didn't know if I should read it, but something in me said I needed to. It wasn't addressed to anyone. No, dear, no date. It simply began. "I don't know if this will ever be read. Maybe it's for me more than for him. Maybe it's both. But if he finds it, I hope he understands." I sat down slowly, letter trembling in my hands. There are days when the guilt eats me alive. Not just for what I did, but for the way I made him doubt himself. He didn't deserve that. He never did. The words bled honesty. They weren't polished. They weren't rehearsed. They were raw. I watch him sleep sometimes. The way he pulls the blanket halfway over his shoulder. How his breath steadies mine. And I wonder if he still dreams of me or if I'm just a character in a story he's trying to rewrite. Tears welled up in my eyes. I wasn't prepared for this much vulnerability. I know he says he's staying, that he's healing, but I wonder if part of him is just surviving. If I broke something that can't be unbroken. And if that's true, I'll still love him through the silence. I paused. My heart was thudding. I felt like I was reading her soul. Not just her apology, but her confession of fear. Sometimes I want to scream, "Don't forgive me yet. I haven't forgiven myself." But then he makes coffee or leaves a note on the mirror, and I think maybe he sees me. Maybe he still wants to. That line undid me. It wasn't just about her. It was about us, about the fragile balance we were holding, together. If this letter is ever found, I hope it's by him. Not because I want to be absolved, but because I want him to know. I never stopped choosing him, even on the days I didn't deserve him. I folded the letter back gently. My hands were trembling, but not from anger, from understanding. She returned from her walk moments later. Sunlight lit up her face as she stepped into the room, and I couldn't help it. I walked straight to her, held her close, and whispered, "I found your letter." She froze. Tears immediately sprang to her eyes. "I wasn't ready for you to see that," she said, voice cracking. "I think I was," I whispered back. In that moment, it wasn't about guilt or redemption. It was about truth, about two people carrying something heavy together. And in the quiet that followed, for the first time in a long time, we felt light. As I looked at myself in the mirror that morning, everything felt surreal. I wasn't the same woman who had entered this story weeks ago. My name is Ethan Miller, and everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family had been turned inside out. The person staring back at me wasn't broken. Not anymore. She was scarred, yes, but stronger. After the confrontation and the truth spilled out like venom, I didn't cry like I expected to. I was empty. I think I had already mourned the version of my life I thought I had. Instead, I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the sunrise as if the world was quietly telling me, "You made it." I filed for divorce the following Monday. There was no drama, no screaming, just silence and paperwork. He didn't fight it. Maybe he knew he couldn't. Maybe he finally saw the strength in me, that I had failed to see myself for years. My daughter stayed with me. She was the only piece of that life I wanted to hold on to. And while the question still came, why did Daddy leave? Or did I do something wrong? I answered with honesty wrapped in love. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Sometimes people make promises they can't keep, but I'll always keep mine." I started therapy, not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand why I stayed so long, why I ignored so many signs, and most importantly, how to never lose myself again. Months passed. Seasons changed. The house got quieter. But in that quiet, I found peace. I redecorated, repainted, and rebuilt not just my surroundings, but my spirit. I learned to laugh without guilt, to cry without shame, and to walk without fear. One day, while walking through the park, I saw a woman crying on a bench. She looked lost, much like I once did. I sat beside her. I didn't say anything profound. I just said, "You're not alone," and maybe that was enough. Life didn't go back to the way it was. It became something new, something real. And while the scars of betrayal still lingered beneath the surface, they no longer defined me. I am Ethan Miller. I survived the storm, and now I'm learning how to dance in the rain.